Welcome to Vox Vomitus, also known as word vomit. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our episode of Vox Vomitus. Once again, I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Gothic Horror novel, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. Today, I am joined by a wonderful group of women, including my two co-hosts, Allison Martine, author of Dibs, and Trisha Mckee, author of Beyond the Sea. Beyond the Surface. Beyond the Sea? That's a foxtrot. Sorry, everybody. I've said Beyond the Sea so many times in my life that it just pops out. We're also joined by our incredible guest tonight, Lily Luchesi. I believe I'm saying your name correct, right, Lily?
Luchesi.
Luchesi. Italiano. See?
Si.
Hi. So, Lily, why don't you introduce yourself again more eloquently than I did and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself.
Hi, as she said, Lily Luchesi. I am a USA Today bestselling author of horror and urban fantasy novels, as well as the addition of mystery. I write the Paranormal Detective series, and for younger readers and adults too, the Coven series. And I am also the co-owner and editor of Partners in Crime Book Services.
I know. Yay! So, Lily, one of the reasons why I was very excited to have you on the show and I asked you to be on the show is that I feel like you have your hands in a lot of different aspects of the writing community. You write multi-genre books for different age groups. And you also are an editor and you do a lot of promotional work. I'm assuming writing is your passion.
Yes. Yeah, I've wanted to be a writer since 8 years old.
Since how old?
8.
8. I see Allison and Trisha both going, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 8. That's when the writing bug hits. So I will ask, what was the first thing you remember writing, Lily?
I didn't write it because I couldn't write. I was 3 years old and I recited and created a poem about pineapple trees. I don't know, but I do know that it used to actually be on video. But that was the first thing I ever wrote.
I can't believe we don't have access to that for this show.
I don't either.
I can't pineapple trees now.
Pineapple trees. I'm just going to go ahead and ask, what was it about pineapple trees that inspired you so much? Do you remember at the ripe age of 3?
No, the only thing I can think of is my grandmother used to make my mom pineapple upside down cakes. That's probably the only time I ever even saw a pineapple by that age. So that was probably it.
I applaud anyone inspired by food to then write. I'm trying to get the foodies who write going on Twitter. It's not happening, but I think it should.
Absolutely.
Fooding to write? Is that what?
No, foodies who write, because I think food factors into writing a lot. Look, it inspired Lily to bring out her poetry from a cake. Not even a cake I particularly like, but I love it. I'm sure I like
a lot of my books too, especially
do you have food
the ones set in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
So has anybody ever said to you, why are you writing about food so much?
No.
Or like, why is there so much? No, I know they have to you.
No, I think because they notice there's such a difference between the characters, because I have, the one who can't eat any food. She's a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
So, when she brings the other characters food, it always does get mentioned because she doesn't. It's mostly in her point of view, so.
But she's still thoughtful and bringing other people. What a nice vampire.
Aw, yay.
She has her nice moments.
Well, instead of eating them, she's bringing them food. That's probably nice.
Yeah, true. She
So
eats
Lily,
everybody else.
Oh, okay. Is she a nice vampire? Do you write nice vampires or do you write like vampires?
She's a hero, but no, she's more of the classic I'm going to slit your throat right now vampire. But she only does it to the bad guy.
I like it.
I don't want to dominate questions, so if either Allison or Trisha have a question, raise your hand.
I wanted to ask Lily. We talked a little bit before about getting reactions when you say you write horror, you write paranormal romance, and then you get hated on. How do you handle it when people basically, without having read anything you've written, diss an entire genre, one that you care about? How do you respond to that?
This actually just happened on Twitter too the other day, and I always ask, how do you know that what I write is any more or less difficult than what you write? This is a craft, and fiction is fiction. I mean, of course there are some that are just basic fun, and they did write it and intending it to be fluff because we need that. So every book is needed. Every genre is needed because everyone needs a particular book at a particular time in their life. Does it hurt? Yeah, especially as I mentioned, there was another video chat like this where the woman said that horror, romance, and paranormal are less than genres.
I think she just slammed all of us in that one comment.
I know.
She slammed everyone in the chat except for one other person. There were like 6 of us. And she slammed everybody with that comment.
So what does she consider, whoever this person is, what does she consider like the only real literature out there?
Space opera and literary fiction.
Okay.
Which I do. I read literary fiction, but
I do write literary fiction. In fact, I write literary sci-fi. But to try to say that it's a different species, or that this deserves the label of it's worthy where the other things aren't. I know people who immediately are like, oh, you said the word science fiction, I'm out. Everyone's allowed to have preferences. They are allowed to have things they would prefer not to read, but to just kind of degrade an entire genre or a group of writers, I just don't understand where anyone thinks they've got the high ground there, especially someone who's writing space opera. It's like, oh, look, your laser beams and aliens are so sophisticated.
Yeah, how is space opera more important to the world than a vampire or a ghost?
She claimed it was the intelligence that went behind the writing, and I commend a lot of you guys who write the hard sci-fi. I know I couldn't do it. I could not keep everything straight. You know, my love of sci-fi kind of ends with Doctor Who and Dragon Ball Z.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. That's really hard right there. Yeah. That's a Doctor Who thing for people who don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't just have some kind of stroke.
We know. Now we think Allison's had like a head injury. She's just like
not recently anyway. Okay.
So Trisha, you write a lot of sci-fi and you write a lot of genre fiction. I think we all technically write genre fiction. Have you ever gotten any backlash?
The face.
Oh yeah, I saw the face.
Because I write all kinds of genre. I mean, my books are usually romance, family crisis, all that. But I love writing short story, horror, and sci-fi. And in each genre I write, you're getting a group of people saying, "Oh, that's trash. That's not real writing. That's not." You know, anyone could just sit down and write that, and romance. And it's like, to make it real, to make it something the audience wants to read, you really have to try to connect. And it's not easy. Any genre where you're writing about vampires, to have to connect with your readers, that's not easy. You know what I mean? I don't understand how people are saying it's not, you can't be intelligent when you write that. Are you kidding me? You have to really be connected. And that is one of my questions is, how do you do that? How do you connect the reader? Are you writing for the reader? Are you writing for yourself? How do you know there's going to be a connection? Obviously there is. You're writing spectacular. It's popular. So how do you do that? How do you make that connection?
That is a good question. And I definitely can say that I do write for myself first. I write what I like to read. And initially that was kind of what the Paranormal Detective series started as, is something that I wanted. Something that I wanted on the shelf, a main character that I wanted to see. Connecting with Angelica, I think it's why it's easier to write it in third person. I switch between her and the human who is her partner and on-off boyfriend, Danny, because sometimes she is very hard to connect with. And that's when I turn to Danny's point of view to show the reader how difficult she is. You know, this isn't something typical. This isn't something that's very easy to slip into. I mean, I've been angry, but I've never been, I'm going to shove iron nails in your forehead and then cut off your genitals while you're screaming angry. So I didn't write that in her point of view. I wrote that from Danny's point of view.
I was hoping Lily was going to say she hasn't acted on it, but I've been that angry.
You know,
so I have a question, Lily. I know we can't talk about that. She's Italian. Lily, you have a lot of books out. When did you start writing? This is a two-part question. When did you start writing, like getting published?
I signed my contract for the first time in October of 2014, and the first book was released May of 2015. And the reason I was able to put so many different books out, I used to be the type of person who could write 100,000 words in under 2 weeks. I was one of those for a while, and then unfortunately life happened, depression happened, a lot of other things so I'm not writing as fast as I used to, but basically it was just speed.
That is some killer speed there.
That's a lot of words. That's so. All right, so now I'm going to take my question in a different route than I was going to, but it brings it to the title of our show. When you were writing 100,000 words in 2 weeks, which is so incredible, did you go back, because I know you're an editor, and realize some of it was just the word vomit, or was this 100,000 words of masterpiece right away?
I took 2 months, and one of the books, The Coven Princess, was 185,000 words. 84,000 of those were cut. I erased an entire character. Some of the words that were, erased an entire character. Some of the words that were cut wound up being repurposed later because they weren't total trash. But in that book, they were total trash. It was too many characters. No, it was too many characters. The timeline moved too fast. Everything, and there are still, I'm gonna say, 30,000 out of that 85 that was cut that are still, they're gone. They're on the cutting room floor and never to be seen again. Yeah, never to be see the light of day.
Oh, do you have a question, Allison, or are you just saying, yeah?
I was just waving goodbye to the words. Sorry.
Take a moment.
Take a moment for the words, everybody.
Yes, please. Please, because I had that problem. I brought out a manuscript I had written a couple years back, and I was polishing it up. And I even posted about it, 180 words, 180,000 words. So I have the same problem all the time. It's just, do I cut it up into smaller chunks? Do I edit? So yeah. I think we're kindred spirits here.
I think you two are kindred spirits. Lily, did you find it? Is it hard to cut those words out of your manuscripts? Like, are you one of those editors that, we all know we have to edit our own work and have to put the big X through the paragraphs, but did you feel like saddened by it or relieved that you could, especially like getting rid of a whole character? Like, did that feel kind of cool?
I was
like
relieved.
Throwing things out in your closet.
Yeah, I was relieved, especially because the character I got rid of, I knew the readers would like him, but I didn't particularly like him. But here's what happened to him. He shows up in book 2. And I'm like, okay, you're popping back up. You fit the plot now. I'll kill you by the end of this. No, he lasted the whole series and became my favorite character.
Well, that's amazing.
So I'm so glad I cut him out of book 1 because he was horrible in book 1.
So, do you primarily write series of books? I think.
Yeah, mostly, and I don't intend to. Again, speaking of cutting words, Stakeout, my first book in the Paranormal Detective series, 20,000 words of that got cut. It was supposed to be a standalone with an entirely different ending. But I actually do have a few standalones that are coming out, and one that I already released called Never Again, which is surprisingly the only book I've ever written that I needed to cut nothing. It's the only one.
Oh,
like 18 of them.
Do you think that's because somehow it became a standalone book, that it just kind of came out in the form it was supposed to be and nothing was getting pushed to the next installment?
Yeah, that was part of it. Never Again, the main character shows up in Paranormal Detective series, and people and myself started liking him so much, and he kind of started talking in my head about his life. And like, well, your life does not fit this series. So he kind of just got his own book, and when he was done talking, the book was done. It was one of the easiest writes I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is the hardest write you've ever had? Like, have you ever had a book or a series of books that just felt tough to get through, but by the time you were done, it was good, but just kind of slogging, like going to work every day, punching the computer?
Yeah, the Coven History, which is book 4 in the Coven series, it was originally supposed to be a separate book, and it's the main character, Harley. It's her father and mother's story when they're growing up, and the first Coven Wars, when all the dark magic's breaking out and taking control. And every time I tried to write in Salem's point of view, the cursor just flashed at me repeatedly. Nothing wanted to come. Nothing. He would not talk. And it was just like sitting there like, why am I even writing this? And it was the first time I ever stopped and thought, why am I doing this? If they're not going to talk, what's the point?
So what got you to do it?
I started writing out
of
partly, but no, I started writing out of sequence. And what I did was tap into some of my own emotions at the time and say, how can I use what's in my head to benefit Salem? And that opened the floodgates to an entire different aspect of his personality, and that it helped move everything along. But a huge part of the reason it was hard was because I was scared, because it's kind of a Romeo and Juliet situation. I didn't want to seem like I was just retelling Shakespeare. So that was another huge reason.
Everybody retells Shakespeare.
But if that wasn't the story she was trying to tell, I can see how that would be something you're trying to fight against and make sure the voice that you're using is yours and not just this retread when you're like, I'm better than that. What can I do here?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so since you do editing for others and you also edit for yourself, which is easier for you and why?
Which is easier? Probably editing for others, because with myself, and this is why I always recommend that authors who are editors too also hire out to other editors, because it's very difficult to see what you need, what your book needs. You're so close to the source material, sometimes it's difficult. So yeah, it's much, much easier and a lot of fun editing for others. But it's funny, I get imposter syndrome when I edit. Like, am I really good enough to be telling these other people what to do with their books? And it's like, well, yeah, I wouldn't have repeat clients if I wasn't, but it gets very daunting to look at it, but it's fun. It's fun watching, someone else's book come together and know that you're a part of the end creation.
Have you ever been editing somebody's book and thought to yourself, this should not be on a shelf. This is not, it's really not ready. It's not a good idea. This is word vomit. And what if you like the person and it's word vomit? Like, is there,
it's
as
actually
as a
easier
paid
for me.
editor?
It's easier for me if I were to know someone and say, okay, you have this sort of problem. If it's someone that I know well, I'm more comfortable saying it. Whereas someone saying, oh my God, this stranger told me to cut all these paragraphs. But there was one instance, I don't even remember the author's name. It was about a year ago, and she had sent in a book. And I told her, I said, this needs a full rewrite. I never heard from her again.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's painful to get that. It has to be. But it was needed, and I just lie to her. As an editor, I can't lie to her.
Right.
I said, I couldn't even tell her name at this point. I have no idea who she was.
Well, that's good. So if you're listening,
How far did you get before you figured out it needed a full rewrite? Did you read the whole thing and then say, mm-mm? Okay.
I did. I always complete the book and do what I can. And then I always, because there's almost always something that needs to be tweaked. But like I said, never have I ever had to tell someone full rewrite. So that's the only reason that actually sticks out in my head.
Oh, Trisha?
So when you're writing and you're working on your own stuff, at what point are you realizing maybe you have some word vomit in there? Is it during the writing process or when you're reading over it?
When I'm reading over it. During the writing process, the word vomit does just continuously come.
Yes.
And there are occasional times, like actually last night I just sent a paragraph to be checked. And I'm like, something's wrong here. And I used too many S words because they were just coming and I wasn't paying attention to what the words actually were.
Right.
So occasionally it will.
See, I would love that.
I'd be like, that's a choice. Take it.
Have you, and I think this happens a lot with genre writers, especially, and people who write series a lot. Because everybody knows genre writers. Genre writers are famous. That's Stephen King. It's, you're everybody. Have you ever been compared to an author that you don't like at all and your books really have nothing in common with? Like, how do you react to that? I think, and I'm asking this, it's a loaded question because I think the three of us here have been compared to people that were like, oh no, did you read my book?
Don't do that.
Once,
don't do it.
But it wasn't my fault technically. Right now the book is unpublished, needs to go back up. It's a co-write. So the comparison was to Dean Koontz, who I know is huge in my genre. I'm not a personal fan of his style. It's not even he's a bad writer. It's not for me. So when I saw the review comparing it to Dean Koontz, I'm like, oh, that must be because of my co-writer's style.
Just push all the buttons. Him. It was him.
No, that's her.
So it wasn't even something that it was surprising. But I'm like, oh, now I get it. It's not just me.
And both of you were just doing.
Do you ever get compared to? Yeah, like no, it was her. It was her. It's him. So because you write books about vampires, I think it's like writing books about, like sexy romance books. And I'm just going to nod to both Allison, Martine, and Trisha Mckee. I think if you write like sexy romance now, people always say, oh, are you 50 Shades of Grey type? Do you ever get, oh, like Twilight, or oh, like True Blood?
Oh, I like True Blood.
I do. I like the True Blood comparison.
I love True Blood.
I've never gotten that, but I would have. I've had people ask me, is it like Twilight? And the first thing I answer is, no, it is not for kids. There is way too much violence and swearing for it to be for kids.
Oh, yay.
And no, just it's not Twilight. It's not.
We like violence and swearing.
Yes.
One of my favorite comparisons ever was from a reviewer, and she said it was like an adult version of the Cirque du Freak series by Darren Shan. And Darren Shan is one of my childhood inspirations. I adore him. So to have that small comparison, it's like, yes. But no one's ever actually compared my stuff to Twilight. They've always asked, is it? And I always can tell them, no, if that's what you're looking for. It's not, even the romance, it is not the same.
I think half the time when we get comparisons, it is by someone who has probably never read your book, and they probably haven't even read what they're comparing it to. They're like comparing one stereotype to the idea of another stereotype, and it's like you don't even know what you're talking about with either of these things. Just back out of the conversation and stop.
I write dark erotica under a pen name, Samantha Calcott, and I did get oh, is this BDSM like 50 Shades? I'm like, no. Mm-mm. Even though it is BDSM, it's not 50 Shades. It's not even close.
No, it's probably more accurate.
Yes. And you do know that it's... Well, no, it's true. You didn't say anything wrong. It's true. It's true.
Right.
So, yeah, like you are right. They probably have not read the book they're comparing it to. They're just thinking of the most popular thing out there.
Yeah, because there's a movie made of it, and they know those people, so they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a book. I know books.
I know books.
I know books. I know
That's
book
like asking
titles.
every fantasy author, are you like Lord of the Rings?
Are you Lord of the Rings? Is this Game of Thrones? No.
Let me grab my Starbucks. No.
No, it's not. And again, nothing
I
wrong
also
with
think
Lord of the
sometimes
Rings or
people
Game
do
of
the
Thrones.
comparison when they're a fan. But if someone's a fan of like an author and they read yours and they like it, I think sometimes they mean it as a compliment. They might not understand it's not the same and it's not, but if they like it and they like something else, to them it's okay, I'm connecting these two so I mean there's that situation too.
Well, and that's a good point. And you never know though, because if it's someone who's read yours and read theirs and there's a connection there based on some mutual affection, that's great. But it almost always seems to come from people who haven't read it, or it's in something like Twitter where there's no facial expression, there's no tone. So you're like, was that sarcastic? Am I reading this wrong? Was that supposed to be a slam? Or are you trying to give me a hug over the internet, you know?
Yeah,
I did an interview the other day and somebody compared my book to Pet Sematary, which is a huge compliment. And I never put those two together at all in my brain. I don't know why. Pet Sematary is a huge compliment for me.
I can totally
they were like,
see
you must
similarities with the main characters.
I know.
I can see those similarities.
And when I wrote that, I went, okay, I see it now, but I read Pet Sematary. I read yours. It didn't come in my head either because stylistically they are so different. So even though there's so different there, it's like, yes, but yours is poetic and this prose, and it's a completely different place, and even what happens is different.
It's apples and oranges. Mm-hmm. But it was an interesting thing for me because then I went, oh, when you get to the root of the story, how sometimes the roots of your stories are very, very similar. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so sometimes people mean things as a compliment, and that's great. Pet Sematary was a huge compliment. Other times it's kind of weird. Lily, have you ever written an entire book and thrown it in the garbage when you rewrote it, like reread it?
I did, but I also decided it was my first high fantasy that I wrote a few years ago, and no one's seen it. And I'm actually going to rewrite the whole thing and hopefully have it out next year. Yeah. I'm going to have to add a lot to it.
Is this a breaking announcement?
Is this? I know. Is this like an announcement?
I've talked about it, but I don't have anything.
But now it's official. Are we officially announcing
it? Yes, that it is official. Because I've been talking about it a little bit. I know my mother's heard about it quite a few times. She's seen the different cover mock-ups. And it's like, I'm ready to rewrite. It's going to be a hard rewrite. Because I did just think, okay, this is trash. Until I realized, oh, wait, there's something to save here. There's something that could be salvaged, even if it is just the characters and throw away the plot.
You know, we talked about this last week. We jokingly called it "good bones, bad meat" or something like that.
Yes,
it was the bad meat.
If the core of the story is really good, it was a bad meat. So, Lily, what is the title? Do you have a title for the good bones, bad meat high fantasy?
For the moment, it's called The Elven Code. It is going to center around elves. Definitely a favorite. It is going to be a little Lord of the Rings-esque. Funny that I even brought that up earlier. Because I think I've watched
It's because you wanted to announce.
Yeah, I've watched those Hobbits and Lord of the Rings so many times, read the books so many times. I would love to try my hand at it and have a female protagonist instead of a male. Because that's something that a lot of people notice, except for Never Again. My books feature a lot of strong women, and thankfully I've never gotten that as an insult. I think fantasy could use more of it.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agree. So do you have a favorite genre to write in?
Horror short stories are my favorites. I have a ton altogether, and I want to release a collection one day. I keep planning, it keeps getting pushed back for other books. But horror short stories are my first love and my favorite. One of the first things I wrote was in 4th grade was a horror short story. It was supposed to be for Halloween. And had my mother check it over, and she looked at me and she said, "You have to change this whole thing, or the school's going to be sending you to a counselor."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
So when you know it's good.
Really needs
10-year-old.
and go.
So that's awesome. I feel like Lily and Trisha are very similar. Like,
Yes.
When you said horror short stories, I saw Trisha going like, yes.
I love that. And I love the way Stephen King calls it, a kiss in the dark from a stranger. Because it's just, it grips you just for that little bit, and it's unforgettable, but you know nothing else about it. And I think that's how they're supposed to stay.
Well, I think it's funny because I love short stories in collections, but you don't see them very often except by a few high-profile authors. And I wish that that genre would kind of take off more, because when I've done collections and I've read collections, a lot of times there's maybe one or two authors in there who I enjoy, and then the rest I'm kind of wading through to go, all right, those are all right, but there's a couple that are just gold. And then when I get an actual collection of someone whose entire work I like, then it's all gold. But you don't see those except for just the highest, most, like I have a short story collection from Neil Gaiman. I've got one from Dan Simmons, but I would love for that to be more just mainstream rather than it's like, well, you can either throw your short story to a collection and hope that you see it, or you write a novel. There's almost no in between. So I would love to see that take off. So Lily, do yours.
I've been part of so many anthologies and collections, and a lot of those, some of them are out of print, some of them I have removed the stories, redone them, and they're all on such a creepy level. They're all, the stuff that I grew up reading, like the Edgar Allan Poe and the Stephen King, and I want it all to be out there. I even wrote a noir one, a Gothic noir with vampires. It's only like 10,000 words, and I want it all out there.
Well, Lily, do it. You have 3 sales right here. 3 sales is still really far away from your best-selling standards, but you've got 3 right here. And
I don't think, honestly, because I've discussed it with other people, I don't think there could be a day where I am, New York Times list consistently. I would literally be grateful for every single sale, because money's nice to be able to live off of doing what I love for a living. I love what I do, and to know that there are real people out there wanting to read my work is insane. It's wonderful. It's the best feeling there is.
I love that. So we're really running out of time. Lily, can you tell people where to find you if you have a specific website? Plug Partners in Crime again. Hi, Annie. I know you're watching.
Yes, she is.
I know she is. I saw her comment pop up. I'm like,
oh, down there. I removed my glasses, so I can't see. I can see your faces, but I can't see that. But okay, my website, you can find me, lilyluchesi.wix.com/home. But the most places you can find me are just search me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well, but I am super active, especially on Twitter. I love being on Twitter. I love the writing community. It's very interesting.
Yes.
And you can find all of my books on Amazon. I'm on Kindle Unlimited. So if anyone has those, throw in some page reads. I know times are tough right now, and KU is a lifesaver for everyone, myself included. And you can also, if you're interested, if you're an author watching, search Partners in Crime Book Services, either on Facebook or just on Google, and you'll find our website. We offer book promotion, event help, editing, different graphic design services, and a whole host of other things. Blurb writing. I actually recently completed one the other day. And
blurb writing is the worst thing.
It's fun. It's fun.
I have to write a blurb and I'm putting it on. I can pay Lily to do this. Interesting. Go on.
Yeah, I love blurb writing. I don't start a book until I have a blurb written.
Really? So your starting point when you write is the blurb?
Yeah, I start when I write a blurb.
Wow. Snowflake method.
It's a little blurb. It's fun.
Oh.
I have a file full of blurbs of future stories that I want to write.
Okay, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, go on. We interrupted. We're sorry.
Okay,
yeah,
no,
I also want to interrupt because I want to plug. I was going to say I want to plug Partners in Crime because I have used their PA services for a couple months, and It's really, for me, refreshing that now I know I don't have to like post my book or post sales or post things like that in a bunch of different groups. I get to just focus on my writing, focus on obsessively making graphics, focus on obsessively staring at my Amazon page thinking, I wonder what's happening. But I do trust Annie and Lily with my PA services. They are great.
Thank you.
So we're going to sign off. I just want to say once again, thank you, Lily. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you for having me.
Viewers, thank you to Roman Siriton, our producer, and thank you to Pam Stack, our executive producer. This has been a copywritten podcast for the Global Authors on the Air Network. And we will see you next week. See and hear you next week. Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, 6 p.m. Eastern, where we are going to have USA Today bestselling author, Agatha Christie Award winner, Paula Mounier. And she's also an agent at Talcott Notch. She writes for career writers. She's a wealth of information and a dog lover to boot. So tune in if you have writing questions, dog questions. Again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you so much.
Fun.
Bye.
Bye.